Hey guys, tonight we're marching back to the sweltering summer of 1214, somewhere in the sticky, horsefly-laced belly of northern France. You're armored, sweating, and not entirely sure whether this trail of banners and curses is headed toward glory or disaster. You can smell the clank of steel and the meaty dust of churned-up roads. Farmers pull their kids inside as your company tramps past. Church bells toll, dogs bark, and someone nearby is definitely praying out loud. Loud enough to make you uneasy. You're just a rank-and-file fighter in King Philip II's army. And you've heard whispers. Oh, the whispers. There's a big clash coming. It might happen near some little village. No one outside Flanders has heard of Bouvines. Funny name. Might be the last thing you ever hear. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and what time it is where you're listening. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The boots you're wearing, they've been wet for 2 days. You haven't slept in a real bed in weeks. It's high summer, and the French sun feels personal, like it has a vendetta. Your squad marches east along a dusty road that barely qualifies as a road, just 2 dirt tracks flanked by wildflowers and the occasional half-crushed frog. Around you, there's a constant clatter of gear. Mail shirts jingle like cursed wind chimes. Spears clunk against shield edges. Someone nearby is wheezing like he swallowed a bagpipe. The air smells like sweat, old garlic, and horses. And you've developed a sixth sense for where the water barrels are. You also know to steer clear of Lord Amory's squire, who has a talent for stepping in whatever mess the horses leave behind. This isn't some little regional skirmish. No, this feels big, real big. Word is the king himself is marching with you, Philip Augustus. And rumor has it, the Holy Roman Emperor is headed your way too, with a swarm of German princes and knights, like something out of a fever dream. The entire continent feels like it's holding its breath. Up ahead, banners flap in the breeze. You can spot the golden lilies of France, the fleur-de-lis, against a deep azure blue. They shimmer in the sunlight like they've got divine backing. But you're too tired to care about divine anything. You're mostly concerned with your blistered feet and the way your helmet makes your ears ring. Then there's the other flags, smaller ones. Count Robert of Dreux, Count Guillaume de Bar, even the Archbishop of Rheims, who insists on bringing both his holy relics and his warhorse. Because what's the point of divine protection if you can't ride it into battle? You overhear a knight talking about troop numbers. Something like 7. Oh, 0 on your side. Maybe more, mostly cavalry and foot soldiers, with a sprinkle of crossbowmen and professional bad ideas. Meanwhile, Otto Thor, the Holy Roman Emperor, is rumored to be rolling in with over 9. 0 men, backed by Count Ferrand of Flanders, Duke Henry of Brabant, and King John of England's ghost of a strategy. Yes, John, England's king, Lackland, they call him, and you can't help but snort every time you hear the nickname. It's petty, sure, but funny. Historians still argue whether John actually planned this whole coalition, or just stumbled into it because no one told him no enough. Anyway, he's not here, not physically. He's harassing Aquitaine or hiding behind some hedge. But his money and his rage are riding with Otto and Ferrand, trying to crush France from the northeast. while John pokes it from the southwest. It's a pincer move. At least, it was supposed to be. Except, John already got whipped at La Roche-aux-Moines and fled like a squirrel who saw a hawk. You hear another knight mutter. Otto doesn't know that yet. So that's fun. You reach a small rise, and the land opens before you, flat meadows, wide and green, sliced by lazy rivers and ditches that sparkle like broken glass in the sun. Somewhere out there is Bouvines, and somewhere beyond it, the enemy. You're told to make camp. Tendu Tiaguin. You groan. Later that night, sitting by a campfire and trying not to cry into a wooden bowl of bean stew. You trade gossip with other footmen. One guy swears he saw the king praying with his hands bleeding. Another says the king has a new banner that glows in moonlight. Someone else insists Philip met with Saint Denis in a dream, and now knows the exact hour the battle will begin. You mostly care about getting a clean pair of socks. A small group of monks moves through the camp, muttering blessings and waving incense, like it's bug spray. A few stop and pray over your group. You appreciate the sentiment, but also worry. It's a death omen, like a final snack for the soul. Overhead, the stars shimmer. You lean back, stretch your aching legs, and watch a bat flap low over the tents. The wind is warm, heavy with grass and wood smoke. You could almost fall asleep, but then a trumpet sounds in the distance. Not an alarm. Not yet. Just a reminder. The king wants the army moving again tomorrow. Closer to Bouvines. Closer to the edge. You fall asleep, dreaming of flags and thunder. By dawn, it's hot again. No surprise. The sun isn't playing around. You rise, lace your boots, and sling your gear. Horses neigh, chickens squawk. Someone's hammering something too close to your ear. It's a mess, but it's your mess. As you march, you pass through villages with shuttered windows and empty wells. A boy peeks out from a hayloft, stares, then vanishes. His mother is already lighting a candle in the local chapel. You cross a stone bridge. Below, the river is low and slow, curling like a sleepy snake through reeds and mud. A knight rides past, his armor polished like a mirror. He smells like lavender, which feels offensive. He ignores you. Of course, you wonder if he'll be the first to fall. Finally, you reach the new staging ground, a broad, open field near the town of Bouvines. The scouts report that Otto's army is nearby, maybe just across the ridge. A few miles, maybe less. Philip gives the order to rest. Set up again. Final preparations. You drop your pack and sit in the grass. Everything feels strange. Still, like the world is pausing before something terrible. Birds chirp. The breeze carries the distant clang of armor. A priest walks by, humming something ancient. You lie back, staring up at the blue sky. Tomorrow, maybe even later today, that sky's going to be filled with arrows. But for now, it's just clouds. The dew's still clinging to the grass when you're jolted awake by the familiar bark of a captain whose voice could bend iron. He's got that special tone that makes your stomach tighten before your eyes are even open. Something's happening. Everyone's up, scrambling. A dozen tents are already half collapsed. A soup kettle's been kicked over, and a chicken. Someone brought a chicken flaps madly into the trees. The sun hasn't even cleared the horizon. But there's movement on the far side of the ridge. You squint, wiping sleep from your eyes, with a hand wrapped in bandages. Flags, horses, lots of them. The enemy is here. And not just any enemy. Word spreads faster than wildfire. It's Emperor Otto IV himself. You don't get many emperors wandering around the French countryside. But here he is, armored to the chin, leading a massive force that stretches from one river to the next. They're setting up across the field like they own the place. Their banners flap eagles, lions. Strange northern symbols and glittering knights move among them like tin gods. Philip doesn't hesitate. Orders fly. Horns sound. Your blood's already racing. This is it. This is the showdown. Let's rewind a second, though just long enough to appreciate what an unholy mess this situation is. Philip Augustus, your king, isn't exactly on vacation. He's been fighting a three-front war for over a decade now, mostly thanks to that lovable disaster named King John of England. John, whose attempts at politics are like trying to sword fight a pudding, has spent the last few years trying to build a mega alliance to squeeze France from all sides. And guess what? It almost worked. Otto IV, the Holy Roman Emperor. I had reason enough to join in. The Pope had turned against him, yes. Even emperors get ghosted by popes, and Philip, ever the opportunist, was cozying up to the papacy again. Add in a few betrayed oaths, insulted dukes, and a generous helping of Anglo-Flemish gold, and suddenly Otto finds himself leading a crusade-sized army through French lands. Alongside him, Count Ferrand of Flanders, whose grudge against France could fill its own saga. Ferrand's lands had been absorbed, taxed, and tugged like a toy by Philip for years. You remember hearing he once compared the French court to a wine barrel with no bottom. Charming. There's also Duke Henry of Brabant, who's brought his own troops and a reputation for using battle axes as punctuation. And this isn't just for kicks. If Otto wins today, France will crack. The alliance can rip it apart like wolves on a wounded deer. Philip might lose his throne. You'll probably just lose your teeth and your lunch. Still, even as both armies set into position, there's a strange calm, like two brawlers circling each other before the first punch. A prelude. You're positioned on the left flank. Not ideal, since the left usually gets hammered first. But hey, somebody's got to do it. Behind you, the French infantry's forming up a mix of pikemen, crossbowmen, and mercenaries who smell like they haven't bathed since Easter. A few have painted symbols on their shields, saints, skulls, fish. You consider doodling something on yours, maybe a chicken. The center of the French line is where the real shine is. Philip himself is stationed there, flanked by his best knights and nobles. There's a golden glow around that part of the field, part sunlight, part expensive armor. You hear the royal banners out, bearing 3 perfect fleur-de-lis on blue, shiny, symbolic, and very stab-worthy if captured. Guarding it is no joke. You sneak glances toward the right flank, where some of the French cavalry is massing, especially under Count Guerin, a former priest who decided swords were more fun than sermons. Yes, really. Historians still argue whether Guerin's battlefield tactics were blessed by divine insight or just terrifying luck. Now look across the field again. Otto's army is huge. Not in numbers alone, though they outnumber you, but in weight. The German heavy cavalry gleams like molten silver. Their horses are broad, their lances long, their armor a nightmare to face if you're not in a similar death bucket. You can see the Imperial Eagle standard, gold and black, fluttering like a taunt. And there, near the center, is Otto himself. He sits tall in the saddle, rigid and proud. His helm crests with an eagle, His cloak is white, and his sword is ceremonial, but you're told he can swing it just fine. His bodyguards are elite. You wouldn't want to play dice with them, let alone trade blows. The contrast is clear. Philip is calculating, grounded, methodical. Otto is showy, blunt, theatrical. You can feel it even from here. Around noon. A hushvaltz, one of those eerie battlefield silences, broken only by the soft creak of leather, the shifting of hooves, and the dry whisper of grass under boots. Both armies finish forming up, and then, like a match, finally striking flint, the signal comes. Trumpets, a dozen of them, long and brazen. One side answers the other. You feel it in your ribs, before your ears even catch it. And just like that, you're moving, slow at first. A shuffle, then a jog, then a run. You charge, shield up, spear forward, art doing backflips. Across the field, the same is happening. Otto's forces surge forward in a glittering tide. You can see Ferran's knights galloping, Brabant's infantry pushing hard. For a moment it feels like two medieval freight trains are about to crash. And you're riding third class. Your unit slams into theirs with the sound of splintering wood and howling men. Your shield shakes. A spear glances off your helmet. You duck, jab, twist. It's chaos. You lose track of time. All you know is movement, metal, and noise. Somewhere behind you, Cabanner goes down. You hear the crunch of bone. Someone's horse squeals an awful, human-sounding cry. You stumble, trip over a corpse. Your side, their side, you don't know, and crawl back up, sucking air through your teeth. Nearby, a knight is dueling two opponents, spinning like a dancer dipped in blood. Further down the line, flames rise. A siege cart, a banner. Someone yells that Ferran's cavalry is overextending, but it's hard to tell if that's panic or strategy. And just then, a whisper cuts through it all. Otto is coming. He's driving hard into the French center, aiming straight for Philip. The Emperor's making his move. The big gamble. If he cuts down the king, it's over. Game. Set. Empire. You grip your spear tighter. You're not sure which side has the upper hand yet, but you do know one thing. This isn't going to be over quickly. You're still breathing, which feels like a minor miracle. Your legs ash. Your arms are jelly, and your ears are ringing like some cathedral bell got trapped in your skull. You've lost count of how many times you've swung your spear, or ducked a blade, or nearly stepped in something you'll politely pretend was just mud. Around you, the French left is holding, barely. Men are pushing back with grunts and hoarse cries, feet sliding in torn-up grass. It's more shoving match than swordplay now, and you're somewhere in the thick of it, jammed between a red-faced baker with an axe and a mercenary who keeps screaming Saint Martin every time he strikes. You briefly consider screaming a saint's name too, but you can't decide if it should be real or made up. Saint Who Keeps You Alive sounds about right. The enemy line here is mostly Brabant infantry, tough men in quilted armor, swinging maces and chopping through your ranks like they've got somewhere to be. They're well trained, brutal, and weirdly quiet, like they don't see the point of yelling unless something is actually on fire. To your right, a Hornblares. Not good. You twist to look and spot a wedge of Flemish cavalry peeling off from the main charge. They're sweeping in wide, hooves kicking up plumes of dust. You know that shape, it's a flanking maneuver. And unless someone stops them, they're about to chew into the French line like termites into a breadstick. A knight near you sees it too. He shouts something garbled, possibly motivational, and spurs forward with half his men. It's a desperate move, but it buys time. The flank stiffens, trembles, and somehow holds. For now. Meanwhile, at the center of the battlefield, things are getting biblical. Otto's cavalry has slammed into the core of the French line with the subtlety of a siege ram, and at the heart of it is Philip himself. Now, most kings would hang back, let others bleed for the crown, but not Philip. No, he's on horseback, right in the soup, his sword drawn and his banner flapping defiantly above the maelstrom. You can't see him clearly. He's a speck in a swirl of armor and dust, but word travels fast on a battlefield. Someone shouts. The emperor's going for the king. You feel it like a jolt. The entire army feels it. Otto, in all his shiny, eagle-helmeted glory, is charging with his personal guard toward Philip's position. It's the kind of bold, reckless play generals dream of and quartermasters have nightmares about. If he pulls it off, France falls apart. If he fails, well, that's history for you. But here's where it gets wild. As Otto's wedge punches into the French center, his men clash with Count Guillaume des Barres. Remember that name. You're going to hear it again. Des Barres is one of Philip's best, and he fights like he's got something to prove to the gods themselves. His armor is dented, his horse is bleeding, and he refuses to yield. Otto's charge stalls, not breaks, but stalls, and suddenly there's this weird, frozen moment where time hiccups. Des Barres is locked in a brutal dance with Otto's guard, holding the line by sheer stubbornness. Philip himself is said to have been unhorsed during this chaos. Yes, unhorsed. The king, face down in the dirt, probably rethinking every decision that led to this exact moment. Historians still argue whether Philip fell or was thrown. One chronicler says his horse stumbled in the melee. Another claims a German knight yanked him off like an apple from a tree. Either way, the French king was on the ground, in danger, and very nearly dead. And yet he wasn't, because his knights swarmed around him like hornets. They pulled him up, regrouped, and launched a furious countercharge. It was like the battlefield itself flinched. Philip remounted. The banner rose again. The French shouted his name, and the momentum shifted. You don't see all this up close, but you feel it ripple outward, a kind of psychic wave across the line. Someone yells that the emperor is retreating. You don't dare believe it. But a glimpse across the field shows Otto's eagle crest backing away, his knights riding hard to reform their line. Did Philip just survive the kill shot? Looks like it. Now the French begin to press. Guillaume des Barres, still alive and somehow still on horseback, pushes hard into Otto's guard. The center holds, then flexes, then starts driving forward like a battering ram. And then, somewhere on the field near the French right, where Count Guerin and the Knights of Champagne are operating, something snaps. Ferran's forces are overextended. You'd heard someone mutter about it earlier, but now it's undeniable. His cavalry, too far from Otto, and with little support, is getting eaten alive. Guerin's countercharge comes in fast and hard, pinning the Flemish knights and breaking their cohesion. Suddenly, Count Ferrand is surrounded. Imagine this, a proud nobleman, armored head to toe, horse twitching, surrounded by angry Frenchmen, and knowing he's cooked, he tries to fight his way out, Legend says he even dismounted and kept swinging, but it's done. He's captured, yanked bodily off the battlefield like a sack of laundry. You hear the roar before you understand what it means. Ferran's gone. One of the three main pillars of Otto's army gone. It's a turning point. Your part of the line starts to notice. The Brabant troops in front of you hesitate. Their commander, unsure whether to retreat or double down, yells, conflicting orders. You yab your spear forward, more in confusion than courage. But the guy across from you stumbles back. That's all it takes. A little crack, the tiniest tremor of fear, the French surge. You're caught up in it running, yelling, slipping in the churned up dirt. Your shield's cracked. Your fingers are numb. But you don't care. All you see is their line breaking. All you feel is momentum. To your left, someone tackles a fleeing knight. To your right, a flag bearer drops his colors and bolts. They're running. They're running. Even Otto can't stop it. The Emperor tries to rally his men. He really does. But the battlefield has a mind of its own now. He's swept up in the chaos, nearly captured himself, and finally flees with what's left of his personal guard. Later, some will say he vanished in shame, riding until his horse dropped. Others claim he wept. Historians still argue whether Otto lost his nerve or simply had no choice. It's over. The imperial army is collapsing. What began as an even match has turned into a rout. Thousands are running. Hundreds are captured. The rest, well, you'll spend the next few days cleaning up that particular mess. But in this moment, you drop to your knees. Not in prayer, just because your legs give out. The Battle of Bouvines is turning, and somehow, you're alive to see it. The dust is settling, and suddenly the battlefield looks different. No longer a chaotic tangle of bodies and horses, but a landscape marked by victory and defeat. You're soaked in sweat, grime, and something that tastes faintly metallic on your lips. But you're alive, scratched up. Yes, but alive. And that feels like a kind of miracle. The French army is roaring with renewed vigor, pushing forward as the enemy breaks ranks. The imperial forces scatter like startled birds, some fleeing toward the rivers, others surrendering outright. The distant cries of captives and the clatter of horse hooves fill the air, punctuated by the occasional sharp whistle of an arrow. You find yourself shoulder to shoulder with your comrades, faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion, but grinning like madmen. There's a strange electricity in the air, something more than just the thrill of survival, the sweet taste of victory. And yet, the battle is far from over. Count Ferrand of Flanders, whose capture earlier had sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks, is being paraded before the French lines. His face is pale beneath his helmet, eyes blazing with fury and humiliation. Some of the soldiers jeer, others spit, but most simply stare, stunned that this once proud lord is now a prisoner. Behind the scenes, though, things are shifting in a way you don't immediately grasp. The political stakes of this battle are enormous. Philip Augustus's victory here is not just about a patch of dirt and a few hundred lives. It's about the balance of power in Europe, the future of kingdoms, and the fate of dynasties. You remember hearing from an old storyteller how this battle would be called the Battle of the Century, and not just because of the blood and steel, but because it would change the course of history. The English crown, held by King John, who you recall is a walking disaster, had hoped Otto's victory would weaken France enough for them to reclaim lost territories. Now, with the defeat, their plans are in tatters. Back on the field, The French knights are rounding up prisoners, while the infantry begins patching the broken lines. The sun is dipping low, casting long shadows and making the banners flutter like ghostly flags in the wind. You can almost hear the whispers of the future. Philip will consolidate power, expand his realm, and set the stage for France's rise as a dominant European power. But not everyone is happy. Some nobles grumble about the cost of the battle, the lost lives, and the growing power of the king. And of course, historians still argue whether Philip's victory was due more to his own cunning or the failures of his enemies. As you gather your gear and prepare to move out, you glance once more at the battered landscape. The battle may be over, but its echoes will ripple for generations. You take a deep breath, feeling the cool, evening air mix with the lingering smell of sweat and blood. Tomorrow, the world will look very different. The battlefield quiets, but your mind races. You trudge among the scattered remnants, broken weapons, shattered shields, and the occasional fallen horse still twitching, as if unwilling to admit the fight is done. The sunset turns the sky to molten gold, painting everything in that surreal glow that makes war feel like a fever dream. You catch sight of Philip Augustus again. He's standing tall, though his armor bears dents and scuffs from the day's chaos. His eyes scan the field, calculating, not relief too practiced, but that cold, sharp focus of a man who knows this victory will change everything. You overhear a knight whispering about how Philip's victory here made him the most powerful monarch in Europe, but also planted seeds of future conflicts. Historians still argue whether this battle truly secured peace or just postponed inevitable strife. Nearby, captured enemies, dazed and exhausted, are being rounded up. You watch Count Ferrand of Flanders, the stubborn noble whose pride was shattered today, his face, smeared with dirt and sweat, flickers with rage and disbelief. You remember hearing a quirky tidbit. Ferrand supposedly attempted an escape disguised as a common soldier, but was quickly recognized and dragged back. It's almost comical if it weren't so tragic. The soldiers begin setting up makeshift camps, fires flicker, and the smell of cooking mingles with the lingering scent of sweat and earth. You share quiet moments with comrades, swapping stories and nursing wounds. The camaraderie forged in battle is thick and unspoken. There's a hint of sarcastic humor, too. Someone jokes that next time, maybe you should bring a chicken for good luck, recalling that earlier flapping disaster. As night deepens, the battlefield feels strangely peaceful. The war machines are silent, the horses calm, and the stars blink above like distant witnesses. You think about the scale of what just happened and realize that while the day was won, the true battle for power, for loyalty, for legacy is just beginning. And with that thought, you settle down, letting exhaustion pull you under. Dawn arrives with a thin mist, curling over the scarred fields of Bouvines. You wake stiff and sore, the chill of early morning biting through your armor and into your bones. Around you, the camp is stirring, the low murmur of soldiers waking, stretching, and quietly tending to wounds fills the air. The battle's aftermath is a strange mix of relief and tension. You shuffle through the camps, hearing fragments of conversations. Some boast about their bravery. Others grumble over lost friends or supplies. There's a peculiar quietness, too, like the earth itself is holding its breath. After the violence, you catch sight of King Philip, now fully dressed in regal robes, his face weathered but triumphant. His advisors are gathered nearby, poring over maps and discussing next moves. The significance of this victory is sinking in. It's not just a win on the battlefield. It's a power play that shakes the foundations of European politics. Philip's hold over his kingdom has never been stronger. Yet, whispers travel among the troops about the Emperor Otto IV's fate. Some say he fled in disgrace. Others hint at injuries sustained during the fight. A few even claim a miraculous escape, involving a secret tunnel beneath the battlefield. Historians still argue whether Otto's retreat was a strategic withdrawal or a chaotic flight. In the distance, prisoners from the defeated armies are being led away under guard. Among them are nobles and common soldiers alike. Their faces a mix of defeat, fear, and resentment. You overhear an odd story about one Flemish knight who, during the chaos, tried to bribe his captors with a jar of honey, apparently a prized commodity. It didn't work. As the sun climbs higher, the camp buzzes with preparations for the next phase, securing territories, sending messages to allies, and fortifying borders. The air hums with possibility and uncertainty. You find a quiet spot, taking a moment to reflect. The Battle of Bouvines was brutal and decisive, but the real test holding onto the hard-won power lies ahead. And as you prepare for what's next, you realize that history doesn't pause. It just keeps marching forward. The days following Bouvines unfold like a slow-motion reckoning. The French army moves through the countryside, consolidating control over territories that once seemed lost forever. You march alongside, your boots stirring up the dry earth, your thoughts a jumble of pride, exhaustion, and the faint nagging feeling that this victory comes with a heavy price. Philip Augustus rides at the forefront, his presence commanding respect and loyalty. You hear stories spreading among the troops how his leadership at Bouvines proved he was more than a king. He was a symbol. Some say the battle sealed his reputation as a ruler who could unite fractious nobles and repel foreign threats. Historians still argue whether his success was due mainly to his own genius or the failures of his enemies. Meanwhile, news trickles back about the defeated Emperor Otto IV. Rumors say he's been stripped of much of his influence, forced to retreat to his German holdings, where his authority is shaky at best. There's talk of internal dissent, political betrayals, and even whispers that some in his camp believe the gods punished him for hubris. In the villages you pass, the locals watch the French troops with a mixture of relief and wariness. Some cheer, others glance sideways, wary of the costs of war. You notice odd customs and quirks in these border regions, like farmers who bless their fields with a strange concoction made from crushed herbs and burnt cheese, supposedly to ward off bad luck. You raise an eyebrow, wondering if it's any more effective than the crocodile dung sunscreen you heard about last week. Back at campfires at night, soldiers swap tales, some boasting about their exploits, others sharing darker stories of loss and fear. The humor is dark, but sharp, a way to keep the ghosts at bay. You hear one particularly memorable line: "If Philip's got a face for battle, it's a face that screams, 'Don't mess with me.'" And, a little bit, "I forgot my lunch." As the army prepares for winter quarters, you realize the battle was only the beginning of a much longer campaign, one of politics, alliances, betrayals, and survival. Bouvines changed the map, but the players are still moving their pieces. You take a deep breath, feeling the weight of history settling on your shoulders. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, and the story is far from over. Winter is creeping in, and the once vibrant fields around Bouvines are now frostbitten and quiet. The army has settled into its winter quarters, and the mood among the soldiers has shifted from the adrenaline-fueled chaos of battle to the slow grind of waiting and wondering. You find yourself sitting by a fire. The warmth, a stark contrast to the cold biting at your fingers. Around you, comrades share stories of the day's fight. Each version slightly different, like the game of telephone, but with more swords and less sense. One fellow swears he saw a knight fighting off 3 enemies at once, while another insists the same knight was actually hiding behind a tree eating a sandwich. You chuckle and shake your head. Truth in war is a slippery thing. The political aftermath is just as complicated as the battlefield. Philip Augustus is busy shoring up alliances and punishing those who hesitated or switched sides. You hear that some rebellious nobles in Normandy and Brittany are grumbling, unsettled by Philip's growing power. Historians still argue whether these internal conflicts would have been quelled without the momentum of Bouvines. Meanwhile, the English King John is licking his wounds figuratively and literally after the disaster at Bouvines. You hear whispers he's planning revenge, and you wouldn't be surprised if he's currently sharpening his daggers with vengeance in mind. It's like the bad guy in a fantasy novel who just got knocked down but swears he'll be back. Stronger and nastier. One odd tidbit you overhear involves a French squire who supposedly found a medieval selfie, a crude carving of a knight's face on a tree near the battlefield. It's probably nothing, but you like to imagine it was a way for knights to brag before Instagram. As the cold deepens, the soldiers keep their spirits up with crude jokes, shared rations, and the occasional stolen chicken. You grin at the thought after all. War may be deadly serious, but it's also bizarrely human. You pull your cloak tighter and settle in for another night, wondering what the future holds now that the battle has been won. The frost still lingers on the ground when whispers start drifting through the camp like smoke. Word has reached the soldiers, the prisoners taken at Bouvines, including several high-ranking nobles, are being shipped off to distant castles and fortresses. You overhear grumbles about their comfortable captivity, and some envy, prisoner life. After all, often came with warm fires and decent food, not exactly what you've been enduring. Among the captured is Count Ferrand of Flanders, whose defiant glare still haunts your thoughts. Rumor has it, he tried to escape more than once, but the guards are no fools. His stubbornness has become legend, earning both admiration and irritation. Meanwhile, the political chessboard keeps shifting. Philip Augustus is busy tightening his grip on the French crown, but he knows victory at Bouvines doesn't guarantee peace. England, smarting from defeat, is stirring up trouble. King John, ever the schemer, is rallying support for renewed conflict. Historians still argue whether the Battle of Bouvines truly ended the Anglo-French hostilities, or merely delayed the inevitable wars to come. In the quieter moments, you catch glimpses of life behind the scenes. The knights polish their armor, the scribes write endless letters, and the cooks experiment with whatever ingredients are left today's special mystery stew with a side of stale bread. One of the quirkiest rumors making the rounds involves a knight who, during the battle, reportedly carried a small wooden statue of Saint Martin for luck. Some say it worked. Others joke that it must have been a very powerful saint to survive that carnage. You can't help but smile at the thought of holy intervention amid such chaos. As spring approaches, the camp begins to stir with new plans and fresh anxiety. The story of Bouvines is far from over, and you feel it in the air, the steady march of history, relentless and unyielding. You prepare yourself for whatever comes next, knowing that this victory, while monumental, is just one chapter in a much larger tale. The warmth of spring breathes new life into the land around Bouvines. But beneath the budding trees and blossoming fields, tensions simmer. You notice the subtle shift as the soldiers prepare to break camp bags packed, horses groomed, and eyes sharp with anticipation for the next move. Philip Augustus convenes his council, surrounded by banners fluttering in the gentle breeze. The king's face is set in that familiar expression of steel and calculation. You overhear nobles debating strategy, some pushing for expansion, others cautioning restraint. Historians still argue whether Philip's ambitions after Bouvines were driven by pragmatism or sheer desire for dominance. Far from the battlefield, King John of England is scheming, as usual, seeking new alliances and plotting to reclaim lost lands. You catch wind of secret envoys sent to the Holy Roman Empire, promising support in exchange for military aid. It's like watching a high-stakes game of chess, with every piece a potential betrayer. Back in camp, you hear the quirky tale of a messenger who, while racing to deliver dispatches, accidentally rode into a peasant wedding procession. The confusion was legendary horses spooked, guests scattered, and the bride reportedly fainted. You shake your head, imagining the chaos, and remind yourself that history isn't all solemn speeches and sword clashes. The soldiers joke that if only battles could be won by luck or by avoiding weddings, things would be a lot simpler. Still, the undercurrent of anxiety remains. The world is watching, and every decision could tip the balance of power once more. As you mount your horse, the landscape feels charged with possibility and uncertainty. The echoes of Bouvines have not faded. They're gathering strength, ready to shape the future. And you ride forward, caught in the relentless tide of history. The march resumes, and with it, a blend of hope and caution settles over the army. The fields you traverse now feel different, less the site of a brutal clash, and more the foundation of a new order being built piece by piece. The air carries the scent of fresh grass and wood smoke, but beneath it, the weight of political maneuvers and fragile alliances hums like a low drumbeat. You catch sight of Philip Augustus riding alongside his trusted advisors. Their faces a mix of determination and weariness. His reputation is soaring, but so are the stakes. Each step forward seems to carry the echoes of both past victories and looming threats. Historians still argue whether his consolidation of power after Bouvines was a masterstroke of diplomacy or a risky gamble that could have backfired. The army passes through villages, still marked by war's scars. You hear stories from locals about strange wartime superstitions, like a knight who supposedly wore mismatched boots to confuse the enemy, or a campfire ritual involving tossing coins into flames to summon luck. These odd beliefs, you realize, are a reminder that even in the darkest times, people cling to hope and humor. Meanwhile, the word spreads that King John is not sitting idle. His envoys work tirelessly, trying to turn former allies against Philip. The political chess game continues, with each move rippling through courts and battlefields alike. At night, the soldiers share quiet conversations by firelight, reflecting on what they've witnessed and what lies ahead. The camaraderie forged in battle softens the edges of fear and uncertainty. You find yourself chuckling at a particularly ridiculous joke about a knight whose helmet was so big he accidentally led the wrong charge, because sometimes laughter is the best armor. As the journey presses on, you realize the story of Bouvines is far from a neat ending. It's a complex tapestry of victories, losses, and the endless push for power. And you are right in the middle of it. As your footsteps and horses' hooves crunch over the spring thaw, you notice how the land itself seems to mirror the turmoil beneath. New shoots sprout from soil, still stained by blood and sweat. while distant forests whisper with secrets and ancient magic. Or at least that's how local legends spin it. You're reminded of an odd medieval belief that the spirits of fallen warriors lingered long after the battle, restless until justice was served. Historians still argue whether these myths helped soldiers cope or simply added to the chaos of war. Philip Augustus's court is bustling with activity messengers darting about, nobles scheming behind curtains, and the clinking of goblets in late-night gatherings. The king's triumph at Bouvines has elevated his status, but with it comes the ever-present danger of betrayal. You overhear talk of a noble who was caught plotting against Philip just weeks after the battle, reminding you that victory on the field doesn't guarantee loyalty off it. Meanwhile, across the channel, King John's frustration simmers. His reputation as a bad king, the so-called soft sword, is cemented by these failures. But he's nothing if not persistent. You hear rumors of new alliances with rebellious barons and distant kingdoms, a tangled web of diplomacy that could pull Europe back into conflict. Among the soldiers, quirky tales abound. One favorite is the story of a knight who, after the battle, tried to sell his horse for an exorbitant price, claiming it had been touched by divine favor. The buyers weren't convinced, but the story spread like wildfire anyway. As you navigate this shifting world, you realize that history isn't just about battles and kings. It's about the messy, human stories behind them, and those stories keep unfolding. Long after the swords have been sheathed, you brace yourself for the twists ahead, knowing that the Battle of Bouvines was only the beginning. The landscape shifts again as you journey deeper into contested territories. The signs of recent warfare still evident in ruined castles and burned-out villages. The ground beneath your feet is thick with history and more than a little mud, thanks to a stubborn spring rain that refuses to quit. You pull your cloak tighter and squint through the drizzle, imagining how the soldiers a few weeks ago might have slogged through the same muck, their spirits as dampened as the weather. Philip Augustus's grip on power grows tighter with each passing day. His court buzzes with talk of reforms and centralizing authority, moves that will eventually shape France's future, but unsettle many nobles still smarting from defeat. Historians still argue whether these reforms were a necessary step toward a strong monarchy, or an overreach that sowed seeds of resentment. Farther afield, King John's reputation sinks ever lower, even among his own vassals. You hear that some English nobles are openly questioning his leadership, a dangerous game in medieval politics. There's even a whispered rumor that John contemplated abdicating, though whether it's true or just a tall tale is anyone's guess. In the camp, morale ebbs and flows. The soldiers tell stories to keep spirits up, including one about a squire who accidentally swapped his helmet for a pot during a chaotic skirmish. The mix-up reportedly saved his life, but earned him a permanent nickname, the Pothead. You grin, imagining the confused faces on the battlefield. The political landscape remains a tangled web, full of shifting loyalties and shadowy deals. You realize that the victory at Bouvines was just a single move in a much larger game, a game that will shape the fate of kingdoms and the lives of countless souls. And so you press onward, caught between the muddy fields of battle and the uncertain horizon of power. The spring rains finally ease, revealing a landscape that is bruised, but beginning to heal. You watch as soldiers dismantle temporary fortifications and load wagons for the next campaign. The rhythm of war is relentless. One victory celebration quickly replaced by the planning of the next conflict. Philip Augustus holds court in a nearby stronghold, issuing decrees and rewarding loyal vassals. His eyes gleam with the satisfaction of a man who knows the battlefield is just one stage in his grand strategy. You overhear nobles debating whether his next move will be to press further into English-held territories or to focus on internal reforms. Historians still argue if Philip's aggressive diplomacy after Bouvines was wise, or if it stretched his resources too thin. Back in England, King John is struggling to maintain control. Tales circulate of barons banding together in frustration, setting the stage for what will eventually become the Magna Carta. You catch an intriguing rumor that John once attempted to bribe a rebel leader with an entire vineyard, an offer so lavish, it's hard not to believe. The camp life continues with its strange mix of camaraderie and chaos. You hear of a cook who, inspired by the battle, began baking bread shaped like swords, both a morale booster and a source of mild confusion among the troops. It's a quirky reminder that even in dark times, people find ways to laugh. As you prepare to move out once more, you can't help but feel the weight of history pressing down. The Battle of Bouvines was decisive, yes, but the true story is woven through the lives of those who lived it, the kings, the knights, and the ordinary people caught in between. And as the sun sets, and you ready yourself for whatever comes next, the road ahead is long and winding, but you follow it with a mixture of fatigue and determination. The lessons of Bouvines have sunk in victory as fleeting, and power is always contested. As you march, the landscape transitions from scarred battlefields to peaceful countryside. Yet, the air remains charged with anticipation. Philip Augustus continues to solidify his rule, sending emissaries to negotiate treaties and alliances. You overhear talk of a proposed marriage between French and English nobility, and a political move aimed at easing tensions. But whether it will succeed or just deepen rivalries remains unclear. Historians still argue if such alliances truly brought peace or simply delayed inevitable conflicts. King John, meanwhile, is rumored to be fortifying his castles and rallying new troops. His reputation as a king who lost more than he gained follows him like a shadow. You hear amusing stories from the camp about his penchant for sour moods and abrupt decisions, including one where he supposedly stormed out of a council meeting because someone offered him cold porridge. Among the soldiers, life is a mix of routine and unpredictability. One favorite anecdote involves a knight who, during a dull patrol, tried to joust with a scarecrow, losing spectacularly, but winning laughs all around. It's moments like these that remind you war isn't just about strategy and swords, it's about the people living through it. As the seasons turn, and you feel the slow but steady pulse of history moving beneath your feet. The Battle of Bouvines was a spark, but the flame of change continues to burn bright. You settle in for another night beneath the stars, ready to face whatever the future holds. You trudge onward, the sun dipping low and casting long shadows across the gentle hills and patchy woods surrounding your path. The air is crisp with the promise of early summer, but your body still aches from the recent campaigns, and your mind spins with the heavy questions that linger long after the clash of steel fades. Philip Augustus's victory at Bouvines has shifted the political landscape, yet beneath the surface, currents of unrest and ambition churn steadily. You can almost taste the tension in the air, a mixture of sweat, dust, and the faint scent of burning wood from distant villages rebuilding after the war. The king rides with an aura of command, but you notice the tightness around his eyes, the way he listens carefully to his counselors, as if weighing every word for hidden threats. His success at Bouvines has made him a hero in the eyes of his people, but also a target for those jealous or fearful of his growing power. Historians still argue whether his subsequent policies truly secured a lasting peace or merely postponed further conflict. Some suggest that Philip's iron grip on the French nobility laid the groundwork for a stronger, centralized state, while others believe it sparked resentment that simmered for decades. Meanwhile, across the Channel, King John is a figure of growing infamy. Whispers of his failings circulate far beyond the English court. His stubbornness, avec les décisions, and infamous temper have made him many enemies. Even among his own vassals, some say he is a man haunted by the shadow of Bouvines, desperate to reclaim lost honor, but lacking the means or the allies to do so effectively. One particularly colorful tale tells of John furiously tearing apart a map in a fit of rage, accidentally revealing a hidden letter from a disgruntled baron, which only deepened his woes. Back among the troops, life carries on, with its strange blend of discipline and disorder. You hear the usual campfire stories, tales of bravery and folly, of knights who lost their horses but gained unexpected fame, or cooks who concocted bizarre recipes to ward off the monotony of military rations. One story stands out: a squire who, trying to impress his comrades, wore his helmet backward during a parade and didn't notice until someone pointed it out, earning the affectionate nickname Backwards Bob for weeks. It's a small, human moment amid the vast, impersonal sweep of history. As night falls, the camp settles into a calm rhythm. Fires flicker against the darkness. Laughter mingles with whispered prayers, and the world feels both immense and intimate. You find yourself thinking about the countless unseen hands that shape history, the blacksmith forging weapons, the messenger braving dangerous roads, the villagers trying to rebuild their lives. The Battle of Bouvines was a turning point. Yes, but it is these human stories that give it meaning. You lie down beneath the stars, the soft rustle of leaves, and the distant call of an owl lulling you towards sleep. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new stories, and new history in the making. For now, you close your eyes, carrying the echoes of Bouvines with you into the night. The morning air feels different today, still cool, but filled with a quiet expectancy, like the moment just before a storm breaks or a great secret is revealed. You tighten your cloak and prepare to move out once again, knowing the road ahead will be as unpredictable as the men who travel it. The Battle of Bouvines might be over, but the ripples it sent across Europe have yet to settle. Philip Augustus, ever the strategist, uses the victory as leverage. His envoys crisscross the continent, securing alliances and neutralizing threats. You overhear talk of him sending a delegation to the papal court, hoping to gain the Pope's blessing for his expanding authority. Historians still argue whether this diplomatic push was a genuine attempt at peace or a calculated move to legitimize his power. Meanwhile, England is a cauldron of unrest. King John's grip weakens as rebellious barons grow bolder. Rumors swirl about secret meetings where these barons discuss limiting royal authority, a revolutionary idea that will soon shake the foundations of monarchy itself. You catch a particularly juicy tidbit about a baron who staged a mock trial against a stuffed effigy of the king, a stunt that caused both laughter and outrage. Life among the troops continues to mix hardship with moments of levity. You hear about a knight who, during a dull watch, managed to accidentally lock himself in the latrine and had to be rescued, hours later earning him the nickname the Porcelain Prisoner. It's these small stories that break the monotony and remind you that even in war, life is filled with humor. As the caravan winds through verdant valleys and sleepy hamlets, you can't help but feel that the world is on the cusp of change. The Battle of Bouvines may have settled one score, but the echoes of that day will continue to resonate for years to come. You tighten your grip on the reins, ready to face whatever comes next. You trudge through the awakening countryside as dawn spills soft light over rolling hills, dotted with blooming wildflowers and dew-kissed grass. The air is thick with the scent of fresh earth, mingled with the faint, lingering smokiness of old campfires left to smolder. Around you, the army stirs to life, a slow ripple of movement spreading through tents and makeshift shelters as soldiers shake off the night's chill and prepare for another day. Philip Augustus is already riding at the front, his gaze steady and piercing as he scans the horizon. The king's presence commands attention without the need for words. There's something quietly formidable about a man who has just changed the course of history, but wears his triumph with a tempered restraint. You overhear one knight remarking that Philip's victory at Bouvines wasn't just a military success, but a clever stroke of political genius. A way to bind fractious nobles under a single banner. Historians still argue whether this victory truly marked the birth of a centralized French state, or simply delayed the inevitable tensions between crown and nobility. The camp buzzes with the usual mix of activity and rumor. One curious tale that's made the rounds involves a messenger who, in his haste to deliver critical news, accidentally took a wrong turn and ended up at a monastery's chicken coop, delaying the message but earning a new nickname, the henchman. It's stories like these that humanize the massive machinery of war, reminding you that even the grandest events hinge on small moments of folly and fate. Meanwhile, whispers about King John grow louder. In England, the Baron's frustration boils over into open rebellion, setting the stage for what will become one of the most famous documents in history, the Magna Carta. You catch a snippet of gossip about a particularly audacious baron who refused to pay taxes and declared himself temporarily independent. Whether true or exaggerated, the story underscores how fragile royal power had become. Historians still debate the extent to which Bouvines influenced the baronial revolt, but there's no denying the battle's shockwaves were felt far beyond French borders. The soldiers around you share a quiet camaraderie, punctuated by the occasional joke or playful tease. One favorite involves a knight who mistakenly jousted against a wooden practice dummy so convincingly that he knocked himself off his horse, earning a good-natured ribbing that will no doubt follow him for years. As the sun rises higher, casting warm light over the camp, you realize you're witnessing more than just the aftermath of a battle. You're seeing the threads of a new era weaving together political ambitions, shifting loyalties, and the everyday lives of those caught in between. You take a deep breath, the weight of history settling comfortably on your shoulders, and prepare to ride forward into the unfolding story. The march stretches out before you like a ribbon, unspooling through the patchwork of forests, fields, and villages. Each step forward is a reminder that history isn't a single moment, but a continuous flow, an endless string of decisions, accidents, and hopes tangled together. The aftermath of Bouvines hums beneath the surface like a current, pulling everyone along. Whether king or commoner, Philip Augustus rides with a quiet confidence that belies the complexity of his position. His victory at Bouvines may have been decisive on the battlefield, but the political arena is a far trickier place. You overhear talk among the knights that Philip's true challenge is now uniting a patchwork kingdom where loyalties are fragile and ambitions run deep. Historians still argue whether his policies after the battle were the foundation of modern France, or simply a temporary patchwork of power. Meanwhile, the shadow of King John looms large. Across the Channel, his failures have turned into legend. You catch a few campfire stories about his dramatic disputes with the church, including a rather odd episode where John supposedly excommunicated himself by accident, a tale so bizarre it's hard not to smile. But beneath the humor lies a serious truth. John's reign is unraveling, and the barons are ready to challenge the crown in ways that will reshape English law and monarchy. The soldiers around you continue their daily rituals, polishing armor, tending to horses, sharing meals of coarse bread and salted meat. Among them, there's a shared superstition about a battle ghost, said to appear on foggy mornings. A spirit believed to bring either fortune or doom. You chuckle to yourself, thinking how war and superstition always seem to dance hand in hand. As the days pass, the landscape shifts subtly. You notice villages beginning to rebuild, churches raising their spires again, and trade routes cautiously reopening. It's a reminder that life presses on. Even in the wake of great upheaval, you realize you're witnessing not just the end of a battle, but the birth of a new political order, with all its promises and perils. And as you move forward, you can't help but wonder what stories will be told centuries from now about this time you lived through. The road winds on, tracing the contours of a land both scarred and resilient, where the echoes of clashing swords have begun to fade, but their imprint remains unmistakable. You're caught between the quiet of a world trying to heal and the restless energy of forces still vying for power beneath the surface. The Battle of Bouvines, while a thunderous crescendo, was but a single chord in the symphony of medieval politics. Philip Augustus, now more than ever, must balance the delicate dance between conquest and diplomacy. His victories have made him a figure of immense prestige, yet they also draw envy and fear. At court, nobles jockey for favor, whispering behind tapestries and plotting alliances. Historians still debate whether Philip's steady hand truly unified France, or if his reign simply masked the simmering tensions that would later boil over into civil unrest. Meanwhile, King John's England teeters on the edge. The barons' growing defiance coalesces into organized resistance, fueled by grievances over heavy taxation, failed military campaigns, and the king's unpredictable temper. You hear a story about a particularly bold noblewoman who led troops in a skirmish, a rare but not unheard of sight in these turbulent times. It's one of those tales that challenge the usual narrative and remind you that history is full of surprises. Life among the soldiers is a mix of mundane tasks and bursts of unexpected humor. One camp favorite involves a knight who attempted to train a stubborn mule as a war horse, only to be dragged through the mud on more than one occasion. The laughter it sparked was a welcome balm against the harsh realities of camp life. As you traverse villages still picking up the pieces, you sense a cautious optimism, a fragile hope that peace might last longer than the briefest moment. Yet, beneath that hope lies the undeniable truth that power is never static, and the struggles set in motion by Bouvines will ripple through generations. You breathe deeply, feeling the weight and wonder of living through history's unfolding drama, and with the sun climbing higher, you steel yourself for whatever the next chapter holds. You push forward into the warming light of mid-morning, the camp gradually stirring with renewed purpose. The atmosphere is tinged with an unmistakable sense of change, like the moment when a breeze shifts direction and carries with it the scent of something new. The victory at Bouvines has set events in motion that no one can fully control, and you feel the pulse of history quicken beneath your feet. Philip Augustus's reign is entering a new phase. You overhear discussions about his efforts to codify laws and extend royal justice, moves that will shape the fabric of France for centuries. Historians still debate whether these legal reforms were genuine attempts at fairness or strategic tools to suppress dissent and consolidate power. In England, King John's troubles deepen. The barons' resistance grows more organized, and you hear rumors of secret councils plotting to challenge royal authority outright. One story tells of a charismatic baron who rallied disaffected knights with speeches so fiery they could rival the fiercest sermons. Whether legend or fact, it speaks to the growing unrest that will soon erupt into open revolt. Among the soldiers, daily life oscillates between monotony and unexpected moments of levity. You learn about a camp jester who, despite the grim circumstances, manages to keep spirits high with witty songs and clever impersonations, though not always to the king's amusement. As you navigate winding roads and bustling marketplaces, you notice the subtle signs of recovery: merchants reopening stalls, farmers tending fields, children playing despite the recent turmoil. It's a reminder that life continues, shaped but not defined by conflict. You find yourself reflecting on how a single battle can ripple outward, touching lives in ways both grand and intimate. The Battle of Bouvines was a turning point. Yes, but the story is far from over. With the afternoon sun warming your back, you prepare to move onward, ready to witness what history will write next. You trudge through a patchwork of farmland and dense woodlands, the scent of freshly turned earth mixing with the distant hum of village life. The victory at Bouvines still lingers in conversations, but you notice how people are already looking ahead. I am aware that peace is a fragile, fleeting thing in these times. The world around you feels like a living storybook, filled with voices eager to tell their own chapters. Philip Augustus is busier than ever, his eyes fixed on expanding royal influence through both sword and word. You overhear heated debates about his use of taxation to fund new fortifications and administrative reforms. Historians still argue whether these measures were visionary steps toward a modern state or burdensome impositions that fueled discontent among the nobility. Meanwhile, England teeters on the brink. King John's missteps have pushed his barons to the edge, and whispers of rebellion grow louder by the day. You catch a peculiar tale of a secret messenger who disguised himself as a traveling minstrel to smuggle letters between rebel factions, a cloak and dagger episode straight out of a medieval spy novel. Camp life continues its strange rhythm of hardship and humor. You hear about a knight who attempted to teach his warhorse to dance, a spectacle that ended with both rider and steed covered in mud, but the entire camp in stitches. It's a reminder that even amid turmoil, laughter remains a vital survival tool. As the sun dips low, casting long shadows over quiet villages, you realize that the Battle of Bouvines was more than a clash of armies. It was a catalyst, setting in motion forces that will reshape kingdoms and redefine loyalty. You take a deep breath of the cool evening air, the promise of tomorrow mingling with the fading light, and step forward into the unfolding tapestry of history. You march through the evening haze, the golden light filtering softly through ancient trees, dappling the worn paths that wind between fields and quiet hamlets. The air is cool and carries the faint fragrance of wild herbs and wood smoke, a calming balm after days steeped in tension and strategy. The Battle of Bouvines feels like a distant thunder, now its shockwaves settling into the fabric of daily life. Yet its aftershocks still ripple unpredictably through the hearts and halls of power. Philip Augustus rides near you, in his presence, a steadying force. Though the battle was won, his work is far from over. You overhear murmurs of his plans to strengthen royal courts and enforce justice more uniformly across his realm, moves that many nobles grudgingly accept, while others bristle at what they see as encroachment. Historians still debate the long-term impact of these reforms. Were they the seeds of a centralized monarchy, or did they merely provoke further noble unrest beneath a veneer of order across the Channel? King John's grip slips further. The barons' frustrations are now open and fierce. You hear a whispered story about a midnight meeting in a candlelit hall, where nobles swore to hold the king accountable, laying the groundwork for what would soon become the Magna Carta. It's a tale told with a mix of awe and apprehension, underscoring the growing crisis in England. Meanwhile, in the camp, life alternates between the mundane and the absurd. A favorite anecdote revolves around a cook who, desperate to impress his comrades, tried to prepare a stew with a secret ingredient, honey, which accidentally attracted a swarm of bees to the mess tent. The ensuing chaos was a welcome distraction from the seriousness of the times. As the night deepens, the stars emerge, twinkling faintly through the canopy above. You lie back on the cool grass, letting the silence and the vast sky soothe your restless thoughts. The Battle of Bouvines was a moment of fire and fury, but now it fades into the quiet work of rebuilding, reshaping, and remembering. You close your eyes, feeling the weight of history settle gently around you. Like a soft cloak, you rise with the dawn, the horizon streaked with pale pinks and soft oranges that promise a clear day. The camp is stirring, the hum of activity growing steadily as soldiers stretch stiff limbs, ready their gear, and exchange quiet words. The smell of burning wood and brewing ale blends with the earthy aroma of damp soil, grounding you in the reality of life after battle, where survival means more than just winning fights. Philip Augustus moves among his men, a rare sight of accessibility for a king. Though you sense the weight of his responsibilities pressing down like an invisible crown, you catch snippets of conversation hinting at his ambitions beyond mere conquest, a vision of France as a unified kingdom, held together by law and loyalty rather than force alone. Historians still debate how much of this vision was genuinely his, and how much was shaped by the counsel and pressures of his advisors. Across the Channel, King John's troubles multiply. His strained relations with the church escalate into open conflict, resulting in his excommunication, a dramatic blow that further undermines his authority. You hear a campfire tale about the king's sudden decision to imprison an archbishop, sparking outrage, not just among clergy, but common folk as well. It's a vivid reminder that medieval kingship was a balancing act on a knife's edge. Life in the camp ebbs between discipline and disorder. One story that circulates involves a young squire who, eager to prove himself, accidentally let loose a flock of geese during a military inspection. The resulting chase, feathers flying and soldiers laughing, is a rare moment of light-hearted chaos. As the sun climbs higher, warming the land and stirring the scent of blooming flowers, you feel the rhythm of a world in flux. The aftermath of Bouvines is not just political maneuvering or military repair, it's a complex weave of human stories, ambitions, fears, and dreams. You inhale deeply, the cool air filling your lungs, and prepare to step deeper into the unfolding saga. The morning mist still clings to the fields as you continue onward, the soft sounds of waking birds mingling with the distant clatter of armor and the murmurs of soldiers preparing for the day ahead. The world feels fresh and tentative, like a canvas just beginning to absorb the brushstrokes of a new era. The Battle of Bouvines may have settled a score, but you sense the real story is only beginning. Philip Augustus rides with purpose, his eyes sharp and calculating beneath the brim of his helmet. His triumph has boosted his stature. Pied, maintaining power, demands constant vigilance. You overhear a conversation about his efforts to establish a network of royal officials, bailies, and seneschals, tasked with enforcing the king's will across the realm. Historians still argue whether these reforms laid the groundwork for a centralized administration, or simply shifted noble resentment to new targets. Meanwhile, in England, King John's situation worsens. His excommunication isolates him politically, and the barons' rebellion gains momentum. You catch whispers of a bold plan among the rebels to draft a charter limiting royal authority, a revolutionary idea in a world ruled by divine right and hereditary power. It's an open question among scholars whether the events following Bouvines directly influenced this push toward constitutional monarchy. Amid the soldiers, life is punctuated by small acts of resilience and humor. One favorite story is of a bard who, frustrated by the grim moods around camp, composed a cheeky ballad about the king's misadventures, earning both laughs and a sharp glare from a nearby noble. It's a reminder that even in times of upheaval, culture and wit find a way to thrive. As you move through villages where markets cautiously reopen and fields show signs of new planting, you feel the pulse of recovery, tentative but undeniable. The Battle of Bouvines was more than a clash of armies. It was a pivot point that would reshape the political landscape of medieval Europe. You tighten your cloak against the sudden breeze, ready for whatever twists this story still holds. You trudge through the uneven cobblestone streets of a small town, where merchants set up stalls with cautious optimism, their goods laid out like fragile promises of better days. The scent of freshly baked bread and roasting meats drifts through the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp stone and old timber. The shadow of Bouvines still lingers, but here life hums with the tentative rhythms of recovery and renewal. Philip Augustus now focuses on strengthening ties with the church, seeking to mend fences after recent conflicts. You overhear debates about his negotiations with the Pope, an uneasy dance of power and piety. Historians still argue whether Philip's relationship with the church was genuinely cooperative or simply a strategic alliance to legitimize his authority. In England, King John's barons are gearing up for more decisive action. You catch a vivid tale of a midnight raid where rebels seized a royal stronghold, an event that shocked the realm and signaled the seriousness of their revolt. It's moments like these that historians cite as the sparks igniting the broader constitutional changes to come. Camp life offers a brief reprieve from these heavy matters. One amusing story involves a knight who tried to impress a noblewoman with a magic trick, accidentally setting his cloak on fire in the process. The laughter that followed was a welcome release in a world often overshadowed by conflict. As you watch the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet, you feel the weight of history pressing gently against your skin. The Battle of Bouvines was a flashpoint. Yes, but the real work, the weaving of alliances, the building of institutions, the shaping of nations unfolds slowly. In the spaces between battles, you inhale deeply, the cool evening air filling your lungs, and prepare to follow the story wherever it leads next. The chill of early morning brushes against your face as you step into the waking world, a patchwork of dew-covered fields, flickering hearth fires, and distant church bells. The aftermath of Bouvines is now a backdrop to the daily grind of rebuilding, negotiating, and planning. The echoes of war are fading, but the reverberations in the halls of power are just beginning to swell. Philip Augustus turns his attention to diplomacy, weaving a web of alliances that stretch beyond France's borders. You overhear conversations about his marriage alliances, treaties, and subtle power plays designed to keep rivals in check. Historians still debate whether these efforts were masterstrokes of statecraft or desperate attempts to hold an increasingly fractious kingdom together. Meanwhile, England's barons finalize plans that will culminate in the Magna Carta, a radical document promising to limit royal authority and protect feudal rights. You catch a story about a secret meeting under moonlight, where noblemen swore their oaths. A moment that would ripple through history as a symbol of emerging constitutional governance. Life in camp alternates between tension and camaraderie. You hear about a soldier who, fed up with endless drills, started a prank war involving cleverly placed whoopee cushions and fake battle orders. The laughter it sparked is a reminder that even amid looming change, the human spirit clings to humor. As the sun rises higher, you sense the turning of an era. The Battle of Bouvines was not an end, but a beginning, a point where medieval Europe started to shift toward a new political and social order, one shaped by law, negotiation, and the slow grinding wheels of reform. You take a deep breath of the crisp morning air, feeling both the weight and the promise of the times, ready to follow history as it continues to unfold. The late morning sun filters through the canopy of leaves as you walk along a narrow forest path, the soft rustling of wildlife accompanying your steps. The world feels both fragile and fiercely alive, the kind of place where a single decision can tip the scales between peace and chaos. The Battle of Bouvines was one such decision, but its consequences are still unfolding in unpredictable ways. Philip Augustus consolidates his power by granting privileges to towns and cities, encouraging trade and crafts to flourish. You overhear merchants discussing new markets and fairs, a sign that economic life is slowly reviving. Historians still argue whether this focus on urban growth was a pragmatic move or a deliberate strategy to reduce noble influence. In England, the Magna Carta is being drafted, a document that will mark a turning point in the relationship between rulers and the ruled. You catch a whispered story about a scribe working late into the night, painstakingly copying clauses by candlelight, knowing that their words would shape centuries to come. The debates around these clauses remain a source of scholarly contention. Were they a genuine attempt at justice, or primarily a tool for baronial self-interest? Life in camp remains a blend of seriousness and silliness. One tale involves a soldier who attempted to teach his pet raven to deliver messages, an effort that ended with the bird flying off mid-training, leaving a trail of feathers and laughter. It's a reminder of how hope and humor coexist in even the darkest times. As afternoon light warms the landscape, if you reflect on how the Battle of Bouvines was more than just a clash of armies, it was a catalyst for transformation, setting medieval Europe on a path toward modern statehood and constitutional rule. You pause, letting the weight of that thought settle, then step forward, eager to witness the next chapter in this unfolding epic. You find yourself moving through a sprawling market square, where voices rise in a lively chorus, traders hawking wares, children chasing each other between stalls, and travelers exchanging news from distant lands. The echoes of the Battle of Bouvines seem almost distant here, replaced by the immediate buzz of everyday life, attempting to reclaim its rhythm. Yet beneath the surface, the currents of power and change flow steadily onward. Philip Augustus now enjoys a firm grip on his kingdom, but maintaining that hold requires constant vigilance. You overhear talk of new castles rising on the horizon, fortresses that serve as symbols of royal authority and reminders to wary nobles. Historians still debate how much these fortifications genuinely secured peace versus provoking further resistance. In England, the reverberations of the Magna Carta are beginning to spread, but its promises remain fragile. You hear a tale of a rebellious baron who, despite the charter, struggles to keep his lands and influence intact amid shifting loyalties, a story that illustrates the messy reality behind the lofty ideals. Camp life has settled into a rhythm, yet surprise abound. One popular anecdote involves a squire who, attempting to impress a visiting noble, accidentally swapped the king's prized horse for a mule, leading to a day of confused greetings and good-natured teasing. These moments of levity offer a glimpse into the human side of historical giants. As twilight deepens, you feel the slow turning of the wheel of history, an era closing, even as a new one dawns. The Battle of Bouvines was a fulcrum, but it's the stories that follow the alliances forged, the laws written, the lives lived that truly define the age. You take a deep breath, savoring the rich tapestry of sights, sounds, and stories, and step onward into the final unfolding chapters. Night falls softly, wrapping the land in a velvet hush, pierced only by distant owl calls and the occasional crackle of a dying campfire. The echoes of the Battle of Bouvines have settled into the soil, the grass where knights once clashed, now whispering secrets carried by the wind. You stand at the crossroads of history, where the past's fierce struggles have carved the pathways leading toward the future. Philip Augustus, now firmly established as the architect of a more centralized France, continues to balance ambition with prudence. His legacy is etched not only in stone castles and royal decrees, but in the very structure of the kingdom that will grow long after his reign. Historians still argue whether his vision was primarily personal glory or genuine nation-building, a question that invites endless debate around flickering hearths. England's tale moves toward constitutional awakening. The Magna Carta, born from rebellion and compromise, marks a tentative step toward limiting absolute power and sowing the seeds of parliamentary government. Yet the road ahead is long and winding, filled with twists no chronicler could fully foresee. Camp life winds down to quiet moments, soldiers sharing stories under starlit skies, laughter mingling with the crackling embers. You recall the pranks, the mishaps, the human moments that softened the hard edges of war. As you breathe in the cool night air, you feel the weight and wonder of history's flow. The Battle of Bouvines was more than a clash of arms. It was a turning point that shaped kingdoms, laws, and the very idea of power itself. Now, the story fades gently into silence, the past folding softly into dreams. Word count 1, 602, 300, word wind, down, and so, here we are, at the close of a long journey, through the shifting shadows of medieval Europe. You've walked beside kings and knights, felt the tension of battle and the fragile hope of peace, and witnessed the slow, deliberate weaving of a world that would shape the centuries to come. The echoes of Bouvines still resonate, but they are no longer mere sounds of war. They are the chords of change, played softly but with lasting power. As you settle in, the night's quiet wraps around you like a familiar blanket, gentle and steady. Remember that history is not just dates and battles, it's the pulse of human stories, the mix of courage and folly, hope and fear that runs through us all. You've glimpsed how a single day can shift the course of kingdoms, but also how the days that follow filled with laughter, lawmaking, and quiet resilience are just as vital. So, breathe deep. Let your thoughts drift like leaves on a slow-moving river, and know that you've carried a piece of that vast, unfolding tapestry with you. Tomorrow will bring new stories, new challenges, and new dreams. But for now, rest easy, the past cradling you softly, whispering its secrets as you drift into sleep.